Japan and South Korea seem similar but are different in many ways. Can you shed some light on the ways they are different politically, economically, in the society? I feel it feels like the South Koreans emulated the West and the old Chinese culture, while Japan is a more distinct culture despite the westernization. Also, Japan is a much larger economy. Is it because they weren't colonized but colonizers? Why isn't Japanese entertainment and music as popular but has a higher fertility rate? Which, in your opinion, is more advanced? Okay, to answer this, I'll have to do a 2 hour episode essentially. Okay, it's a very complex topic that you have brought forth. Very interesting as well. And is South Korea overhyped in front of Japan? See, one thing they have in common: they are both US vassals, they're both under US occupation, permanent US military occupation. Okay, so that's one thing they have in common. Now, if you look at the geographies, you can see Japan is offshore. It's an island nation. It's an archipelago, and it's always had a separate existence as a separate entity. South Korea has always been under the shadow of China for the most part, to some, and also under the shadow of Japan. And Japan has always been very independent. They, of course, did absorb Chinese culture. They absorbed all of Buddhism and Indian influence via China, which is why uh, they have a very Chinese influence on their Buddhism and on the Indian culture they've absorbed. But they are still very different, very independent, very different from South Korea, and very different from China. That's Japan. Japan has a very old history, goes back at least 2,500 years, maybe more. South Korea also has an ancient history going back 2,000 or maybe more years, but they've always been very, very strongly Sinicized under Chinese influence, which means they have been under Chinese influence. Japan is a larger nation, a larger economy, and they've always been, especially since the Meiji Restoration of the 19th century, mid to late 19th century, they have been very, very industrialized. They have been very westernized. They've sought to emulate the West, which eventually led to their disastrous downfall in the Second World War. So you could say that the Meiji Restoration of the 19th century was the beginning of the end of Japan, because they threw away their old lifestyle, way of life, the supremacy of the dharmic system that the samurai and shogunate system had established, and so on. Uh, and so on. So very different cultures. Very There are similarities as well. They have issues. They have their own issues, which we'll not go into at the point. Politically, different systems. Economically, Japan is a much bigger economy. Society, the South Korean society is well, again, different. They've taken different trajectories. South Korea is mostly atheistic now, and the rest are Christians. Very few Buddhists I hear still remain in South Korea. They've completely lost their indigenous culture. When it comes to Japan, they still retain their Shinto Buddhist culture. They also are facing Christianization and all those problems because of foreign occupation, but they still have resisted much better than South Korea. Um, Fertility rate, both nations are suffering very badly. South Korea's fertility rate is catastrophically low. Japan's is marginally better. I don't remember the exact figures right now. I'll not go and research it, but it's marginally better than South Korea. Um, so which is more advanced? Look, as a nation, as a culture, as a civilization, Japan is more advanced, has always been more advanced. uh, what is overhyped, what is not, it depends on the overlord, the US. Today both are vassals, both are under occupation. So whoever the overlord will favor will be hyped. So they have both been given some rewards for being US vassals. South Korea was allowed to industrialize and become a major industrial power in service of the West, in service of the US, and it has suffered catastrophic demographic decline as a consequence. But they are given a certain amount of prestige, and people are fans of K-pop, even though nobody understands the Korean language. But people, for some reason, like K-pop. So that's the reward they've been given. One of the rewards they've been given. And when it comes to Japan, they are influential in the world through anime and other stuff, video games, all of that, and so on. Overall, I would say Japan is, from my perspective at least, is a more significant culture and civilization than Korea. That's the way I see it.